Now we're going to install a valance with stationary panels, a blackout, and a shear. The first part of the process is to install the mounts. To install the clips, you simply hook into the back ledge where the ridge can then twist into the slot, and then it's secured onto the stationary rod. Then we're simply going to mount it onto the back of the valance board. Installing the stationary rod to the back of the valance, you generally want to go approximately 1 inch to 2 inches off the side board of the valance. That way the stationary panel will be covering to the side of the valance and completely covering that side. And now you have the stationary rods installed into the valances, and we're ready to move on to the L brackets, which are going to be installed onto the wall. The next part of this installation is mounting the brackets onto the wall. As you can see, we have a bare wall there, and now we're going to install the L brackets first, which support the valance. The next part of this process is very important to get the right height of the blackout and blinds onto the wall. So you need to lay out the blackout on the floor and measure the distance from the bottom to the top, which in this case is 91 inches. This video is to instruct you how to install a cornice board, stationary panel, blackout, and shear. Onto a wall, we're going to be using a wall mount bracket system. Now, this particular window has more than a 2-foot depth from the top of the ceiling to the bottom of the window. Therefore, we're going to wall mount this. We're going to be doing a double rod wall mount with a stationary rod that's going to be installed on the top of the back of the cornice. The way this will look after it's installed will be the stationary panels will be coming down and butting against the side of the air conditioner, with the blackouts and the shears coming down to just graze the top of the air conditioner. Now, this is a very important part of this process to make sure that the blackouts do come and hang directly above the air conditioner at the right location on the wall. So right now we're going to measure the blackout. Blackout is 69 inches. Another important fact with this process is you're going to have to add an additional inch to the measurement. The blackout is 69 inches. So when we come and do our measurement from the bottom of the AC up to the wall, we're going to have to add an additional 1 inch to that. So we're going to go 70 inches from the bottom of the AC up to the wall and mark it. And we're going to add 1 inch to the blackout. So the particular blackout panel in this case is 69 inches. So we're going to add 1 inch and go 70 inches from the bottom of the AC up to the wall, and we're going to mark that. That way, the 1 inch will compensate for the rod, the width of the rod, and then it will hang correctly and just graze the bottom of the AC. Now, this process is the exact same for the shear because they are the same length. Again, the shear is 69 inches from top to bottom. So when we measure for our wall and our 1 inch for the rod, it will be 70 inches is where we're going to mount our brackets. Okay, now we are going to mark where we're going to be mounting our wall brackets for the shears and the blackouts. So we're going from the top of the AC up the wall 70 inches and making our mark. And here again we are mounting 3 wall brackets, so we're going to make another mark off the top of the AC to 70 inches on the wall for our second wall bracket. After we've measured from the top of the AC and made our mark at 70 inches, we're then going to measure down from the ceiling to that mark. In this particular case, it's 16.5 inches. Now we're going to bring that across the window and mark for the rest of our remaining brackets. That way, the cornice will remain level and appear level to the eye from standing back from the window. Now that we have made our measurements and marked our walls where the brackets are to be located, the next step in the process is to be mounting the double wall brackets. Now that we have marked on the walls where our wall bracket is going to go, you'll want to take your double wall mount and butt it up flush against your mark and install it. The next step of the installation is installing the wall, the L bracket onto the wall, which actually holds the cornice. Now, in order to do this, earlier we had measured the stationary panel at 91 inches. Now, what we're going to need to do is add an inch to that to compensate for the stationary rods that we've already mounted inside of the cornice. So now to mount or to mark the spot for our L bracket to go, we're going to start from the floor and bring our measuring tape up 92 inches, make our mark. And once again, the reason we're marking this at 92 inches is because the length of the stationary panel is 91. We're also adding 1 inch to compensate the width of the stationary rod. Now we will mount our L bracket. Now we've installed the right L bracket, and of course we're going to do the same thing to the other one on the left. Now we'll be installing the rods for the shears and blackouts. Always remember to keep the master carrier facing you, because that's what holds the shear and the curtain on. And you simply center your rod, put it in the clip there, and then use a screwdriver and simply turn it into the slot until it's secure. And once again, all 3 brackets are installed simply by taking a screwdriver and twisting this silver bracket, which slides into the slot and secures the rod into place. And then we repeat that process again with the second rod. And once again, keep in mind that you want to keep your master carrier facing you. The next process in the installation is mounting the blackout shade. This particular blackout shade has a plastic stiffener on the right side, which is going to hold the baton. Because it's on the right side, that means that this is the left panel. Once again, we're installing the left blackout panel, which has the plastic stiffener on the right side. We're going to start from the back hook and mount it to the far back stationary holder, and then we're simply going to hook it on to the bead carriers until it reaches the master carrier. How to do the baton. Okay. And now that we've put all our hooks onto the carrier beads, we add our last hook, and then we take our plastic stiffener and we're going to attach it to the slot in the master carrier. It will line up where you can then install the wand screw. The screw will insert into this holder, which then mounts inside the ferrule on the blackout and screws into the back of the master carrier. And now that we've installed the blackout, we will do the right blackout and the shears doing the same process. One more process before you install your cornice is to install the 1-inch return bracket. It simply goes at the end of your rods against the wall, and this will hold the returns or the back around of your panels. And of course, you repeat that process on the other side of the window with the 1-inch L bracket. And now the next step is to simply repeat the same thing as we did with the blackout, only with the shears, keeping in mind that the black stiffener piece, if it's on the right side, that's your left panel. And the last step of this installation is to mount the cornice board onto the L brackets on the wall. So we're just simply going to lift this up. Sometimes it's better for a two-person process, and we're going to mount it onto the L brackets and then attach it with screws underneath. And then, of course, the last step after we mount the cornice board onto the L brackets is simply to attach the stationaries onto the stationary rods. Now that we have the cornice resting on the L brackets, we're simply going to secure it with a couple screws. Now with the last step with the stationary panels, you do have a particular right and left one. The way to determine that is the gap between the return and the next hook. If the gap is far to the right, then it is your left panel. And this far back hook is your return hook, which will mount to the 1-inch L brackets that we mounted to the wall earlier. Stationary panels simply hook, just like the blackout and the shear, onto the BB carriers of the stationary rod. And once again, the stationary panels mount just like the blackouts and shears, using your hooks and the BB carriers on the stationary rod that's mounted to the cornice board. And now this 2-panel with stationary and valance installation is complete.